So this week's episode of Dororo is definitely one of the more interesting and unique episodes that we've seen within this anime up to now. This was a very fun and very different feeling of an episode, and I'm sure there's going to be some people who will try saying like, can a man really train his sharks to be that loyal just based on vocal commands, or can Dororo really just kind of land on the nose of the shark and kind of be able to ride it to the top? But in terms of this very insane guy being able to train his sharks, that's actually completely believable to me. I've been to zoos seeing whales do some very crazy techniques just based on vocal commands. Pretty much every animal in existence can be trained by a human with the right teaching. So the way he was training it, even though you might not be able to go into the random wild and see a shark tamer, this is actually really believable to me. And the only thing that was a little like maybe he got really lucky would be with Dororo and how she was able to ride the shark up to the top after that really cool plan played out. But this episode was quite fun. There was a couple of moments near the beginning that were a little shaky to me. There was a couple of sequences where essentially they were just going across the screen left to right, and I think they changed scenery like 4 or 5 times, and it went by so fast it was a little dizzy. But after that, this episode really just functioned and flourished in a really interesting way, and the entire theme to this episode was really about the dead and what you do to the dead in order for the living to survive, essentially, because you have this man who literally discovered where Dororo's mother's body was, and because of the past and how he used to think that maybe the boss was hiding something, but after enough time passed and he wasn't able to piece together what it was that he was doing, he gave up on trying to expose what the boss was doing. But after you lose everything and you need money in order to survive, you start thinking back to the past. And when you try to go back to where you once were and discover a grave, you can see how something so horrible could play out. And it really is messed up to dig up your old friend's dead wife to get the tattoo on her back. It's absolutely horrible, and you can see the pain in Dororo's eyes and voice. It is disturbing, it's cruel, it's unnatural, but because of the time period they're in, and really it is all about survival, money is what's going to keep you alive, money to feed your soldiers, to get you soldiers, to keep you alive. I can understand why he would do it, but it doesn't change the fact it's a completely and scummy and disgusting move. But that's what's great about Dororo, is they just show us sequences like this that are just so horrible, but you can also understand why they would act in this way. And I just think the raw emotion, it really makes sense on why someone ended up with half of the map, because supposedly only Dororo's mother as well as Dororo would know of the map that were alive, but you can understand how this man would come to the conclusion of the map exists, to then why he would dig up a gravestone. It just makes sense. It didn't feel like an ass pull. It actually just, everything kind of clicked in a very natural and fluid way, which I quite liked. And then to just see kind of like the building up to seeing this shark man who was disturbing, literally feeding his own arm to feed his shark, to then just the slow creeping realization that this entire village that should be here was fed to 2 sharks, and how the sharks got more and more powerful. Essentially, they grew in ridiculous sizes the more human they ate. Instead of eating just random fish in the sea, they were eating human and got even more powerful, to the point that you're left on a boat. Like, this was such an interesting sequence, because you start off the episode thinking Ichichi is just like, who cares about this guy? He's a scumbag, and he is a scumbag throughout this entire episode. But you can also understand why Dororo wouldn't just immediately turn on them, because even if they are bastards, they still were kind of companions at one point in time, and the way that she can kind of give this kind of pep talk to say like, you're acting like you're dead, and just almost kind of mirror the boss, was actually really interesting and really inspiring to see how they would come up with a plan to defeat a shark that was essentially ridiculous in size. You're in their territory. I thought it was actually pretty cool, especially with Dororo being bait to them, pulling up, to then riding on the nose, to then slashing on the belly. This was like the only part of the episode that was a little more out there for me, just because it would be such a lucky 1 in a million sequence to be able to land on the nose of the shark to ride up. However, the way they killed the shark was actually pretty believable in terms of just all of the soldiers stabbing it at the same time. I thought that was really cool and really well done, to then just, once this is over, once you're back on land, of course you're not going to give up on the treasure. The moment where they strip down Dororo to basically check over her body, I thought was actually really well done, because of how disturbing it was and how you wished it could stop. Dororo constantly is scared of her body being exposed because she's a girl, but she's hiding in men's clothing because that's the safest way to travel. And I like how they realize what happened afterwards, because they're just like, because all along they were just kind of wondering, like, what exactly was the boss hiding, to then seeing what they did. But there's no shame in their voice, but just more of like, they observed, like, and kind of clued into what was going on all along, where she's just kind of huddling against a fire, naked and afraid, and it's such a disturbing sequence. And that's what's really great about Dororo, is how they can take such horrible sequences, be it murder to just assault, and they can really make it into a really interesting narrative. And that's what I like about Dororo, especially because she was against the fire. Of course, her back's going to light up and show the tattoo, and I think next week's going to be really interesting. Especially because Hyakkimaru is going to meet up with an old friend, get another prosthetic leg, probably travel across the ocean, and most likely save the day. But it'll be interesting because we still have 8 episodes left of this show, and it feels like we're about to get to the treasure, maybe 1 or 2 more episodes. And what will be the end goal? Once the gold is exposed, unless they kill all these people, what's going to happen? Are they immediately going to take that wealth and spread it across the land? Or is Hyakkimaru just going to go back to killing demons after Dororo is saved? It's going to be really interesting. I think they have quite a few possibilities. They could take the money right now, or they could leave it until after the demons are dealt with. I think there's a lot of interesting things at play. If I was in Hyakkimaru's shoes and I started thinking maybe I should think about more than myself, I would think that maybe that wealth could start being distributed now, so once the land does get completely wiped out, once he regains his body, maybe they won't be as screwed as they are once everything just immediately flips like a light switch and the lands are no longer able to grow crops, they no longer get rain for water, and the armies can push back. I think this wealth, it has such a wide variety of ways that it could go down. You could see some of these soldiers living and maybe switching sides, maybe saying it's okay that they don't take the money, or maybe they'll just get a small cut, maybe they'll all get killed, maybe they will take all the money between Dororo and Hyakkimaru. They got a lot of interesting ways to go, and that's what I'm excited, because every time you think you know where the show wants to go, they'll introduce enough areas that kind of like a crossroad that they could follow, and it will become something so much more interesting. This episode, it kind of feels a little weird, but that's what I like about the episode. Anytime Dororo plays with its formula, such as episodes like these, you really get something that's so interesting while still feeling like it fits the style of story that we're seeing, even though this was Dororo on a boat against some hungry-ass sharks and a man who's has far too many screws loose in his head. It still felt like a Dororo episode, especially because it was driven by getting that gold and treasure that was hidden by Dororo's father. This was a really strong episode. It was definitely a lot better than last week in terms of being a very interestingly styled episode, to say the least. I feel like we're getting right back on track. I think the cliffhanger at the end of the episode after the credits has me very eager to see where Hyakkimaru actually wants to go once he regains his prosthetics that he did lose. I think there's a lot of interesting things at play, and I just think the kind of almost like the dead can't testify. We have one man digging up a dead body because the tattoo on her back is not going to do her any good, but it can for the living. While you also have a man who's feeding dead bodies of a village to his pet sharks while also killing innocent people so his friends and family, as he calls them, can live. It's pretty messed up, and it's almost like what side of the living gets to actually be right or wrong, because for everyone in this world, it's all about survival. Sometimes you'll feed dead bodies to keep your beasts alive. Sometimes you'll see these people are no good, so maybe you kill them. Like, everyone, even when they do such questionable acts, you can almost think, I can understand why they would go down this route, even if it is completely messed up. I mean, for this insane man, even though he's completely insane, for him, his only family and friends would be these sharks, so you can understand how messed up his mentality must be, that he could eventually lead down the path of feeding an entire village to his pets. You can understand why someone who used to be friends and colleagues and family with a group would dig up the dead wife of one of his best friends for the money that will keep him alive. Like, you understand, even as messed up as it is. Of course, you're going to continue to root for someone like Dororo overall, but you understand where they're coming from and why such a messed up time period is leading these characters down this road, and it's completely disturbing, and that's what I love about Dororo. It's not a happy-go-lucky adventure, not some Disney princess who gets to live happily ever after. This is a messed up tale. This is a messed up story about war and the consequences that come from everyone's actions, and that's what I love about this week's episode of Dororo. An incredible episode, a lot better than last week. Even though last week had its pros, there definitely was a lot of cons. This week was a lot better. Even though this may not have been the flashiest of episodes, and there definitely was some noticeable dips in the overall art, I really like how the color palette in this episode really flourished. A lot of blues, a lot of browns, but I really like just how the overall atmosphere to this episode looked, because When they were in the water, I love how they detailed the waves and just kind of like the glistening water, but when they were just walking in this kind of like godforsaken town just full of blood and despair, I like how different this episode looked when you compare it to a lot of the forest scenes and just overall towns that we've seen up to this point in Dororo, because really it was a pretty gloomy, very almost off-putting looking episode. Like, it was supposed to look a lot different than what we've seen up to this point. I think it's what tied together the theme and just overall weird aura that this episode had going for it, and why I liked it so much. It felt like such a different episode while still feeling like Dororo, and even if it wasn't the flashiest of episodes that we've seen within this season, or even within Dororo period, it still had a unique atmosphere, a unique look to really let these colors pop in a pretty interesting way. And typically you wouldn't come out saying something that had a lot of browns, and even sometimes a lot of blues wouldn't be the flashiest of things out there, but I think it really had an interesting style that kind of tied together the message and what this episode was going for quite well. For everyone who did watch, let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. If you did enjoy, be sure to leave a like and also hit that subscribe button if you happen to be new. So until next time, everyone, please take care. Have a good one.